Taking a stance against oppression is nothing new in our world. It's been part of our human history since we learned how to write. We are hardwired to challenge tyrannical rule because taking a stance for what we believe in is an existential part of humanity. Let's take a look at how our rebels draw their stories from the pages of history. All right, and we are back. Here we are, rebels throughout history. So I think my first question to the panel is going to be, of all the important figures that we've had throughout history, which ones do you guys gravitate to the most? Which ones have really been definitive for you guys in some way? And, tell us a little bit about why you chose them. So I'm going to start with Leah, or Leah.
Ooh. Yeah.
Told you.
Love it. I actually chose like a not good rebel, like a negative guy. And I was thinking, I don't know why, but Henry VIII always resonates with me. I know he's like the most popular British monarch to ever live, but why it's like it was so ugly. His like breaking from the religious groups and how we're still feeling the effects today is just an example of how a bad rebel is, and he went against, or separated church and state and whatnot, but we're still feeling the effects almost 500 years later, and how it's almost an example of what not to do. I don't know. It's just
it gravitated to you, right? I guess.
Yeah. Like how one day's decision can affect.
What was it about him that, like, what was the one thing about him that you would say that was a good thing?
Well, he started out really well, right? Like he started out with, I think, maybe not loving parents, but he had a brother who he didn't have to worry about. He wasn't going to be the heir, and he could just live his life and be charming. And then he got some power, and then, shit hit the fan.
Yeah, I mean, power tends to corrupt, right? So, Yeah.
Exactly. And so not a good rebel, but a rebel.
Definitely a rebel.
Yeah.
All right. And Susan, what about you? Who is your rebel? And tell us why. I think you're muted. Just unmute.
I apologize.
That's okay. You're cool. There you go. Now we can hear you.
My rebel is she's very good. And her name's Margaret Sanger. Are you familiar?
No. Do tell.
She is a birth control activist, or was, I should say, a sex educator and a nurse and a writer. And she had the first birth control clinic in 1916. So if you can imagine what kind of challenge that would be in that day and age, that's pretty crazy. Wow. But I have a current hero that, and I really want her to go down in history. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about her. Okay. Her name's Anne-Marie McQueen. And Anne-Marie has joined the gig economy actually quite a while ago. And she is a health journalist, and she curates all kinds of information that people my age do not know about menopause. Yeah. This woman is my hero. So I just wanted to mention her for everyone.
It's fantastic. We love to hear it. And we love to learn about what makes you guys, so unique, and what inspires you and who inspires you guys. So I love that you brought that to us. I'd never heard of Margaret Sanger. So there you go. So now I'm going to have to Google her and learn all about her. And I'm sure everybody in the chat is going to do the same. All right.
Awesome. I'm glad.
And Jason, what about you? Who is your hero, your favorite rebel, and how has they inspired you?
My favorite rebel would happen to be MLK, because it wasn't just him. It was more like a mixture of like a bunch of the civil rights leaders from the time from his time period, like John Lewis and Malcolm X and all of them. But with MLK, I felt like with him, a lot of his speeches resonated with me, and a lot of what he was trying to convey with all his messages was what really spoke to me. Because at first he was trying to approach it in a way that was peacekeeping, but after a while he started to realize that there were certain things that he would have to like
Yeah, you're gonna have to get dirty.
accept.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, he was gonna be my hero as well. You know, I love MLK, Martin Luther King Jr., of course, and he was just, you know, his, you know, he had a dream. And, you know, I'm actually living that dream right now because in this panel, not only do I have women, right? I have people of color. I have people of various different descendancies and ethnicities. And our cast is fully international. So, you know, I am kind of living Martin Luther King's dream a little bit for him. So, yeah, for me as well. But I have another one. But we'll start with Taylor. Taylor, tell us about your favorite rebel in history and why they inspire you.
I chose Joan of Arc. It was just when I learned, first off, that, you know, when she led the army, the French army during the 100 Years' War, she was like 16 or 17, and I thought mind-blowing. First off, just like amazing that she did that, and you know, that's what really resonated with me because, you know, you're never too young to do amazing things like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, literally, she was like 15, right? She was very young.
yeah.
Yeah. So when she kind of led everybody into revolution, I mean, that was amazing. So, and for a woman, you know, and I mean, you know, she actually was out in the field. Like she picked up a, you know what I mean? Like she was,
Yep.
Yeah.
so total.
She was leading those men.
That's right. Total rebel. So love that. All right. And then Robert, what about you? Who is your hero? And tell us why they inspire you.
Yeah, you know, this is actually pretty fitting because I was really excited when Taylor said Joan of Arc because, you know, my country's history. Oh, hello, Kat. My country's history was half rebelling. We had like nearly 4 centuries of just rebelling against colonizers, and you know, there's a lot of people I can name, but the one in particular that really struck out, and her name was Teresa Magbanua, and she was actually called the Visayan Joan of Arc, which is like our version. Visayan's like the central region in the Philippines.
Yes.
And you know, she was a school teacher who retired and became a housewife, and she learned how to farm, she learned how to shoot, and she learned to ride on horseback. And then when the Philippine Revolution was in full swing, she just didn't hesitate to join the effort, you know, even though her excuse me, even though her husband didn't allow it. She fought anyway. She became a battalion leader. She won several key battles during the Philippine Revolution, and she was probably one of the few. I don't know if I'm correct. I'm right in saying this, but I think she was one of the few Filipino heroes who fought in the Philippine Revolution, the Philippine American War, and participated in World War II. She was in her 70s at this point, but
Wow.
you know, I think this a hero like her says a lot about how, like Taylor said, like you're not too young, you're not too old. Doesn't matter what your gender is, where you come from. If you have that conviction that something isn't right about the world, then you stand by it, and then nothing can stop you. And I think it says a lot about how real the stories in Star Wars feel, and it sort of mirrors like how these normal people take a stand against tyranny. You know, then that's why this woman's called her name's Teresa Magbanua. You can look her up. She has a really interesting life.
Love that. Love that.
Love
And
it.
I love hearing about all the different ones because I mean, obviously, I mean, we don't know everything, right? So like learning about Teresa, learning about you know, Margaret, you know, that's just super perfect for me, and that's one of the things that I really wanted to bring to these podcasts. Like last month, right, in the lovers chat, we talked about Shakespeare, and we talked about, you know, the love story in your stage plays of like olden years, and how that's, you know, evolved, and how it's still very like true today. Like, you know, you read Romeo and Juliet, or you read Macbeth or stuff like that. It's all really just still so relevant today, you know. And I think that as actors, that is the mark that you make, right? Of being able to bring those characters to life and inform other people about these stories. And I think that Star Wars does that so well. There's so many stories within the realm of Star Wars. It's not just, you know, your Jedi and your Sith fighting it out with lightsabers, but, you know, there's so many people that have, you know, been the ground floor for all of those stories to take place. I mean, Star Wars wouldn't be Star Wars without the rebels. You know, there would be no Star Wars without the rebels. There would be no Luke Skywalker. There would be, like, you know, that just it's so evident and resonant with the fabric of this franchise, you know. So I love that. And I think one of the other questions I had is for all of you guys, and anybody can jump in at any time, is, you know, why do you think that your character decides to join the rebellion? Like, what prompts that character? You know, what's at the core of the issue within themselves that makes them go, I need to join this effort and this cause? Anybody's welcome to jump in.
Oh, well, I'll jump in.
Oh, yeah. Princess Leia.
Let me tell you about the rebellion. No, like, if you look at Princess Leia as a character, she was exposed to this at such a young, early age by her adoptive parents. And I mean, but it's also in her bloodline. Like, you look at how political her mother was, and like her birth mother, Padme, and then you look at, you know, the badassery of Anakin. But she came from so much love, but she was also exposed to politics, and had such a political upbringing. So she saw the good, the bad, the ugly. But I can dive more into her later if anyone else has why someone would want to join the rebellion, just to fight some of that ugliness that she saw at such an early age.
You're muted, Susan. it's totally cool.
What the hell?
It's okay.
Okay. Yeah, I can go next from here too. Maz, well, was she the first rebel? I don't know.
That's a debate.
It is.
I mean, she's over 1,000 years old, so, you know.
She might have been.
She might have been.
I've lost count. I don't know what her exact age is. I just know she's over 1,000. Mm-hmm. And I think the thing that really is the core of her decision is her connection to the Force and her need for truth and light.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I also feel like, you know, she had such a strong friendship with Leia. They went on I don't know, people do not know this, just because, again, people don't often read the books or the novels or the comics, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But, you know, Maz had this, you know, quite varied history with Han and Leia. You know, they would go on adventures together when Leia was younger. You know, little Ben would go to her castle, and Maz would, you know, teach him how to cook whatever she was cooking. You know, and so they were very close friends. And I think that a lot of the spirit that Maz has to continue that work comes from honoring her two good friends in Han and Leia. So I think that's very true. How about you guys? Anyone else?
I want to let General Finn speak. Yeah.
General Finn.
Well, with Finn, initially he was kind of just like unsure if this whole resistance thing was even going to pan out. So like a lot of his decisions were mostly made on adrenaline, I feel. Yeah. And he was very just like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing, but I got to do it.
Yeah. It was very spur of the moment, very quick decision making in just a second, you know. And I think a lot of it also for Finn was just like, you know, Rey was really the first person that I think that he actually made friends with. You know, it's not like he was friends with any one of the other conscripted soldiers, right, that served the First Order. He didn't have like a close friendship with anyone, and Rey was like the first person that really offered him that friendship, right? And all of a sudden, you know, like, she's in peril. So being the good guy that he is, because at the core, that's Finn. Finn is a good guy. Yeah. And being at the core of that, you know, he's just like, well, I got to go save my friend. She's my friend now. Like, he kind of owned her a little bit. He's like, that's my friend. I'm gonna go get her. Guys do
she's my
whatever.
bestie.
That's right. She's
She's my
bestie.
bestie.
She's bestie, which is akin to like you and Maddie. You guys are always like so
Yep.
close like that. So, Madeline Norton being our Ray. So, super, super cool to see that. And I think just for Finn, I think at some point it became more to him than just, I feel like Rose Tico, the character of Rose Tico, really served to kind of expand his view and expand his reasons why he is in the fight.
Yeah.
He was able to see, all of this, the brutality that, at Canto Bight, when they had that moment in episode 8, he was really like awoken by Rose, like, oh my gosh, this is like not just like, look at all this tyranny and all this suffering, and at some point that changed it. It changed his perspective, right? And he just he elevated, and he was just like, it's not even about Ray anymore, right? It's not even about me anymore. It's about all these people. Yeah,
it's about everyone.
Yeah, so I really love that, and I love his character so much, and I'm so excited to be able to actually get him to the point where we see him as a Jedi in episode 11. So I know I'm terrible about keeping secrets, guys. I'm so bad. I'm terrible about it. But yeah,
Spoilers.
I mean, yes, totally. Spoilers all over the place. But I could do that because it's my movie.
You can do whatever you want, Maria.
That's right. I will not spoil anything about Ahsoka because that's not mine. Yeah, so I'm super, super excited to see, Finn really just come into his own and be who I always thought he would be. So, all right. So anybody else? Go ahead, Taylor. Yes.
Well,
Bliss.
yes. Well, Zori was seemingly neutral, but it's not a surprise that she was going to be joining the rebellion because, she wanted to be a good person. Deep down, she always wanted to be a good person, especially when she met Poe and saw how good of a person he was.
Right.
And
yes.
yeah, so, and then also, the First Order was always just kind of the enemy to her and her home.
Yeah.
They took over and all of that and
Yeah.
destroyed it. So it was just a no-brainer that she was going to join eventually.
Yeah, and I mean, you could hear it when in episode 9, where Poe follows her up to the rooftops where she's keeping watch, and you can hear it in her voice when she's like, they started taking the children first, and like that was like you could just hear it in her voice. Kerry Russell did an amazing job of portraying Zori and portraying her like disdain with what she was seeing, and like just through a mask. We never got to see her face. You know what I mean? Like it was great. It was amazing to see that. And I just remember that moment where her and Poe kind of look at each other, and she's like, I've got a way out. Come with me. She's like, come with me, Poe. And it's like, once again, they're like right back to when they were like, in their earlier years. And you could see Poe, and he's like, he wants to so bad. But he, like Finn, has, it's bigger than him, right? This whole thing is bigger than him. And he's like, I can't walk out on this fight. And for Poe, I mean, he is the son of rebel heroes. I mean, Shara Bey, Kes Dameron, both served under General Han Solo, and Shara Bey served with Wedge Antilles, and all the so like they're rebel heroes. So he's kind of has that in his blood too, to just be like that. Yeah. And Robert, what about you?
To that point, like, I don't think anyone knows this, but Beaumont Kin, I actually found this out when I auditioned. I looked up the character before I auditioned, and Beaumont Kin was apparently a teacher, like in the lore. He's an educator. He was like a young professor in the making, and I think because he knows so much about the galaxy's history that he doesn't want to see it happen all over again. Yeah. And I think that's what pushes a guy like him, just a regular a regular educator, regular teacher. I think the ultimate reason why you would want to learn history in the first place is like you want to understand how catastrophes happen. You want to know how to avoid that in the future, and to tell other people like, hey, this is what happened before, and this is why it happened.
Yeah.
And he did have a chance to like ignore what was happening, but he just couldn't, like many others in Star Wars.
It becomes
Yeah.
personal, right?
It does,
becomes
yeah.
personal. And as a teacher, he's just thinking, I mean, look at these kids. Like the First Order is just stealing children for their conscripted camps. And just like, he that probably really is the part that probably teetered him over to the side of the fight, because he was just like, these kids, like, they're being separated from their families by force. It's not, it's not pretty. And the thing about him is, for in our story, he's kind of in the background and he doesn't have a lot of lines and stuff. But I think for me, Beaumont represents every rebel, right? Every rebel, every member of the resistance that's not, at general level or lieutenant level or anything like that. He really does represent the majority of just your regular average people that, band together for this common cause, right? So it's a really excellent thing to do. And so I have 2 questions, one for Leia, one for Susan. For Leia, what makes Princess Leia so uniquely qualified to be the leader of the rebellion?
Oh, where to start? To quote Lady Gaga, she was born this way.
Yeah.
Literally born this way.
Yep.
She had an incredibly kind, brilliant, political, beautiful mother. And then she had Anakin Skywalker, and she was born from love, really.
Yeah.
And then her dad thought he was doing the right thing out of love to turn to the dark side. He was very misguided.
Mm-hmm.
And then she gets her adoptive parents, Bale and Brihanna. I always
Yep.
say that wrong.
Yeah.
Apologies. And so growing up in a life of politics and rebels. So
Yeah.
they're the ones that were kind of behind the scenes. Like if you
Yeah.
read her Princess of Alderaan book, it's
Yeah.
like opened my eyes to her as like a young buck teenager and how she
Yeah.
was exposed to this. But there's something like in her, it's just almost like Finn being at 2 years old, getting kidnapped and
Mm-hmm.
forced into being a stormtrooper. It was just always against his grain. People can recognize, and Leia has always been able to recognize goodness and evil,
Yeah.
even from her birth roots. But she's uniquely qualified because she had that political exposure, and so she knew how to talk to people. She was very diplomatic, and she knew how to inspire the masses. But she also had that heart that she had the galaxy's problems on her shoulder, and her life of service as a princess in the Alderaan monarchy, her life was never her own, and she was okay with that. She knew
was
that
born
was
into
fine.
service. Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
She knew like this, what can I do for the greater good? And everything that she did in her entire life was for the greater good, even coming down to her as a mother and doing everything she could for Ben and kind of not being there so she could be a part of the Senate or run the rebellion. It was just, she gave up everything because to her, the galaxy were her children. Every single person in the universe was hers. And she knew that like one galaxy's problem was her problem, and one galaxy's, criminal mastermind, evil empire, that was her problem too. And so she took it on with such grace and motivation that people just wanted to join that.
Yep. Absolutely. And I think one of the things that is like not often talked about is the fact that, Princess Leia, having been part of such a, affluent family as the Organas, right? I mean, she put most of her money, her own money, into building the resistance. And because she was such a great orator and speaker, and she, she really could sway people to the cause. She really was able to continue to fund the resistance as a paramilitary organization with the help of those senators that unfortunately met their end with the Hosnian Cataclysm. You know, and so the resistance is in a precarious spot right now, right after that event. And you know, of course, Leia is the one that will, you know, she's going to go out there and she's going to find that money to like be able to, you know, keep it going. And that takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of this and a lot of that at the expense of, you know, time with her son, time with her husband, you know, I mean, and then starting to feel like her son was, I want to say, courted by the dark side at such an early age. You know, and she was just so worried about that, you know, because of course she knew that, you know, it was part of her family's history, right? her DNA. And so I feel like, you know, her just that's a hard place to be in, you know, to have to fear losing your child that way, right? So,
and she never through all that, she maybe strangling Jabba the Hutt, but there wasn't a lot of darkness with Leia either. Like she never wavered.
Yeah,
like even Luke kind of wavered, and like, you know,
yeah. Well, Anakin obviously.
He like really wavered the farther side, but like Leia never really. There was like greater good.
There was
murder.
There was never this teeter-totter with her. She was on her path, and she never
eye on the prize.
Yep, never deviated. And we say that there's a line. There's a line that is said in our movie in episode 10, and we actually speak to that quite poignantly. It's the fact that Leia has never waited. You know.
Yeah.
So and you know, and if you think about George Lucas had wanted to originally he thought about making Leia the chosen one. And that was something that George really, you know, kind of thought about for a while. He was like, maybe we should, maybe we shouldn't, you know. So he was on the fence about that. So I happen to think I have a whole entire, you know, different outlook on what the chosen one means. To me, I feel like Leia is the chosen one. I feel like Luke is the chosen one. I feel like, you know, anybody that comes from Anakin's bloodline is, you know, it's going to carry the weight of that prophecy. So
absolutely. I love that.
You know, she fulfills that. So, all right. And then I have a question for Susan. Last question in this topic, but why does Maz feel such a sense of responsibility to continue the legacy of Princess Leia?
Well, I'm gonna say it in my own words.
Yes.
Like if the light side were a brand, Leia would be the brand ambassador.
Yeah.
You know, she's strength and she's hope and she's resilience, and Maz has all of those built-in qualities as well, and she can love just as deeply. So her duty that, you know, she assigns herself is to continue guiding the next generation with those same tools.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you guys. We're going to move on to our next topic. We're going to talk about the sacrifices you never see. There are so many. And, you know, I think that that's such a poignant topic to talk about because, you know, it doesn't come for free. That's for sure. So let's hear about it.